Good afternoon, everybody, on this gloriously sunny afternoon. I hope you enjoyed that jaunty music for the intro. I've not heard that before, but quite in keeping with the weather today. Welcome to the latest Service Department News webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about how Service Department and apart hotel operators can take a bigger slice of the leisure market. My name's George Sell. I'm Editor-in-Chief at International Hospitality Media, and we are a publisher of online B2B news sites for the hospitality industry, and we also organise events, conferences and award schemes. Now, this Service Department News webinar series is sponsored by IMS. You can see their contact details there, and you can also find out how to get in touch with them in the chat. There's going to be quite a lot of information in the chat on this session today. And before we kick off, we are going to watch a short video to find out some more about IMS. So thanks to IMS for sponsoring. Just a few guidelines for today's session. We're going to have a 45 to 50-minute panel discussion with our fantastic contributors today. And we are going to get around to answering as many of your questions as we can in the final 10 to 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, please do submit them using the chat or the Q&A function in Zoom. We'd like the session to be as interactive as possible. A recording of the session will be sent via email to everybody who's registered. So just going to show a few screen grabs from various stories that we've run on Service Department News over the last year or so, really, just to show a bit of context and give the conversation a bit of background. Some of them are pertaining to our speakers today. So we've got the Perks loyalty scheme from Roomzzz, which I'm sure Robert will tell us more about shortly. Cheval's new My Locanda apart hotel brand is an interesting one. There's a slide there from some very recent research from Savills, which said that more than half of UK operators are back to pre-COVID occupancy levels. We've also got Gio's hotel there, the Fellas House in Cambridge, which is the first Cheval Collection property in the city. The other picture there is from a story from back in 2018, which was about the rise in leisure travel, and we'll talk about that again today, even though I dislike the word, but I think it's something we need to discuss today, because I think the way people are traveling has changed quite a bit. I'm just going to show a few more slides now from STR. These are courtesy of Alex Robinson, so thanks for these, Alex. And these are just highlighting how well service departments have performed since the start of the pandemic, which is shown by the dotted line there as the start of the pandemic in March 20. And if you look at the premium, the occupancy and ADR premium that service departments have shown over traditional hotels, you can see that it starts widening quite soon after the pandemic starts. And here in the UK, apart from a little blip around July and August, it stayed there at more or less the same levels. And these are much bigger premiums than they were before the pandemic. And the next few slides, so if we can go on to the next one, please. Similar story in Germany. In some cases, the premium is even bigger there. And the next slide, I think, is Australia. Again, a very similar story. And again, in the UAE, where the gap has been significant and times has squeezed up a little bit there recently. But you can see this trend has been repeated in a lot of different regional markets, which is an interesting trend, I think. So let's get on and meet our fantastic panelists. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves let's do it from left to right, as we see on the slide there. So I've made things a bit tricky for myself today by inviting two Roberts on the panel, but let's start with Robert S. If you could just introduce yourself and your company, Robert.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Robert Speirs. I'm head of the marketing for Cheval Collection. We're 2 locations at the moment. We've got 9 buildings in London and 3 up in Edinburgh, with a couple of projects in the works, including one in Frankfurt to open next year and one up in Glasgow in 2024. That's the new Myla Candor brand that George mentioned earlier.
Thanks, Robert. And Gio, good afternoon to you.
Hello, everyone, or ciao, everyone. What a pleasure to be here, guys. So yes, obviously, I'm Giovanni Valentini, Vice President of Operations for TLC Group, but I'm obviously here today to represent our flagship premises, which is the Fellows House Curio Collections by Hilton, which is one of the first ever property for Curio to be an apart hotel, or something else, I might say, after all, in the call. But just little things about me is I'm just in love with hospitality. I've operated many different business models, from being a bigger brands as well, which in IHG, Marriott, Hilton, you name it. And yes, I'm delighted obviously to be one of the webinar speaker today, after having been back in the service apartment news in 2016 when George, we were together on the stage. So yes, listen, delighted to give a little bit of a sparkling guide on this webinar. So thank you.
Thank you, Gio. And lastly, Robert, welcome to you.
Hi, thanks, George. Yeah, I'm Robert Ali, been looking after the Roomzzz apart hotels business for the last 4.5 years or so. Quite a challenging and exciting last 4 years it's been, doubled in size. But obviously we've all faced the challenges of the last couple of years in particular. But looking forward to conversation today.
Thanks, Robert. You can see the LinkedIn profiles for all of our speakers in the chat. So if you'd like to connect with them and carry on the conversation afterwards, please do. Robert A, I'd just like to stay with you for a minute, please, and let's just get a general idea of how the leisure versus business balance at Roomzzz has shifted since the start of the pandemic, and what trends you're expecting to see now as we hopefully move out of it.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, Roomzzz has always been pretty good at leisure. To be fair, it's where it came from that's changed for us. So it's not so much that we've been growing it or diminished it. It's just that we've changed our distribution quite carefully, a long strategy, but it's really come and blossomed over the last sort of two years, 18 months, 2 years. So Roomzzz was a big deal for us. I always used to say it was pretty comfortable split 50-50, corporate and leisure. Midweek, we weren't as good at long stay as some of our esteemed competitors, some of these guys on the call on the chat today. And we certainly got better at that over the last sort of couple of years through COVID. But you know, leisure's been a big part of our mix, but distribution and the way we successfully achieve what we wanted to achieve has changed a lot. Big trends. I think we're all scrabbling up hills. I'm sure a lot of the chat today will be about learning fast, and we've all been doing a lot of learning over the last 2 years. Almost every day was a new day. But how this all evolves out of COVID and out of the current situation, there's a lot to learn very fast. No doubt about it. all the old sort of routines and patterns have changed, considerably.
Thanks, Robert. Robert S., how does that tally with your experience, and how has the mix at Cheval changed?
Yeah, I think the mix is obviously, well, it does continue to shift. I mean, the dropout of corporate business, the short-term business almost completely when the pandemic started. We obviously benefited from being able to host longer stays, and we had some guests in house already. Shifted to some of the industries that were still operating. Some of the mining, for example, was still going. And then we were talking slightly just before the call about how the entertainment business, as in people coming over for film production, those companies took them a little while to get back up and running, but they did, and that sector has continued to expand. And we've been successful both in London and Edinburgh for that. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the predictions that was made actually quite at the beginning of the pandemic was that short-term corporate travel would be the last bit to recover. And that's definitely what we're seeing. There is some more coming back, but trend-wise, it's longer lengths of stay, and the people traveling have to jump through a lot more hoops to get people to authorize the spend. So there is that sort of hybrid thing. There's a bit of a blurring in terms of the types of leisure guests and business guests. I mean, previously, you might imagine somebody flies in straight to meetings, checks in super late, checks out first thing in the morning to pick up an early flight, and they're barely in the apartment. Whereas now they're behaving almost like a leisure guest, where they're there, say 50% or more of the time. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, we'll move on and talk a bit about the blurring between the two types of guests a bit later on. But Robert, can you tell us a bit about the new My Locanda brand? Is that aimed more towards the leisure traveller than the traditional Cheval product?
No, I wouldn't say it's. I don't think we conceived it purely with leisure in mind. There was definitely an element of this business travel that I think we were looking for, where these are the sort of medium lengths of stay where there's less emphasis perhaps on spending all this time in your apartment, but then we're making the communal spaces a bit more interesting. So introducing a degree of hospitality and food and beverage that previously had not been part of our model. So it's a bit of a departure for that, but I think we understand that people want that sort of isolated togetherness where they're in a space which is a bit more inviting, and they can combine the advantages of an apartment with the communal areas.
Mm-hmm. So do you anticipate a similar length of stay at the new brand, or do you expect it to be slightly shorter in line with more of an apart hotel product?
I think it'll probably be shorter than some of the residence products we have, definitely. Yeah. The apartments are smaller, and it's emphasized more the studio and the one-bedroom sizes. So that obviously, you're less likely to be traveling as a larger group or a multi-generational family with that kind of product. But I think we see, again, that sort of combination of business and leisure. So you come for a slightly longer length of stay, maybe 4 or 5 nights, and then combine it with a city break weekend, for example.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. And Gio, obviously you're a relatively new property, so you probably had some, you've done your homework, you had your forecast of who your guest mix was likely to be. Has it panned out like that? And what are you seeing changing?
To obviously reconnect also the previous answers from the both Roberts, we actually had a completely switch from the opposite of what the typical apart hotel have experienced. So the Fellows House Courier Collection by Hilton was born as an apartment style hotel. And what does that mean for anyone else is that it combines basically an apartment style guest rooms into a luxury hotel style of public areas, F&B restaurants, cafe, and swimming pool. Now, what does that mean to the audience? That means that when we obviously design and vision this concept, we were thinking into a very good maximized ratio of long stay and short stay, which would have been obviously supported by the brand on the short stay element, and also obviously very strong and power from the in-house expertise on our extended stay. What happened is, because of the time we opened, which was back in July last year, we started our journey with a fully booked and short stay. Staycation took over our buildings as a very luxury 5-star expectation. And obviously our learning was not to shift from apart hotel into short stay and try to attract this, but vice versa, to shift from a short stay into an apart hotel style.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting, to be honest, because that gives, to be honest, the basic of our business as well as of our resources. Now we can go through the call today, and for as much as we push on the ratio maximization, revenue maximization, SDR, guys, we all have a same challenge. I believe sometimes it's the bottom line resources, which obviously fulfill all our businesses model. So what we did basically at the time was work on reputation, tell everyone obviously that we are an apartment style hotel, and make sure that people understand that we are obviously an extended stay fit for purpose build, but obviously with an extra level of service expectation. Obviously our long stay service agents distribution channels, we work on long stay packages, but nevertheless we work with our partner brand and our third-party activation to obviously rejuvenate all of that length of stay, extended stay sector. And I have to say nowadays we are in a very strong position whereby we can kind of deciding what extended stay we really want to attract and to what rate and what length, obviously maximizing that short stay in order obviously to dictate a very high quality level of execution based on our resources. So a very interesting model of journey, and I believe is a unique model nowadays to have our product out there, which incorporates so many outlets into an hybrid building, which fulfills a long stay and a short stay, by living together in the same roof.
Mm-hmm. And is your average length of stay going up as the guest mix normalizes to something more like what you were expecting when you conceived the property?
It's very more dynamic versus an apart hotel style. Because obviously, remember that we are still a Cheval Collection by Hilton, attracted by a very high quality service standards and expectation, providing pool and restaurateur. So our length of stay really fluctuate between the week and the weekends due to that strong power of short stay. But again, it's that level of profit obviously that brings back to the business, which obviously inject our resources back into the game. So we can have anything between 7 to 14 nights, but then suddenly you've got enough break and you go down to 2 to 3 nights average. So it's very dynamic, George, because of the market and the product offer we are having. But that what it gives back for us is a first position on RGI, a first position, obviously, most of the time also on MPY. So again, we are actually playing a very high level game because we are so flexible that we can attract every single type of model by giving them obviously exactly what they're after. And
yeah.
that is the beauty.
Thank you, Gia. Robert A., let's talk a bit about this kind of blurring between the, I don't think there is a distinct demarcation now between a leisure guest and a business guest. So how have you seen your customers behaving in terms of that? Are they staying longer? Are they bringing family? Are they bringing pets? How's all that evolving?
A little bit of all of those things probably is fair to say. Our length of stay now is about 3 times what it was pre-COVID. As I said, we were probably quite good at playing the distribution game beforehand, but it was a lot more shorter stay. So we weren't as proactive in the longer stay market. A lot more distribution, a lot more different type of business. So yeah, there's a good proportion of longer stay there, nice base. And there's a mix of private and corporate amongst that. I call it private because it's not necessarily leisure. There's a lot more longer stay. It's not just a city break. So our length of stay is about 3 times what it was, and I suspect it'll be even when we're right out of COVID, when it's somewhere in the rearview mirror, we'll probably still be at least 2 times, maybe 2.5 times what we had before. In the good old days, the good old hospitality days, it tended to be the rate package that you bought from the place you bought it from that defined you as a business or leisure guest. So your corporate customers midweek, or you were leisure guests weekend, whether you're buying direct or through a leisure brochure or a third party. And that used to be the distinction. Of course, now our pricing, like everybody else, it's so widely distributed. Everybody falls into this great big bucket of transients. So you still look at midweek and weekend in somewhat different through different glasses.
Yeah.
But it has definitely blurred, and the whole aspect of that we can all see is this hybrid working, right? This hybrid movement. I've spoken before about digital nomads. That was a concept I kind of heard about, but I didn't really ever see it. We absolutely have them in the and have had them in our hotels in regional cities in the UK consistently over the last 2 years. People who, so are they a leisure customer? Are they a business customer? Well, they're obviously doing both, and they're living there, they're working there, they're coming and they're going, they're working different hours, working for across different time zones and different geographies. They're just embedded into one of our apartments for the location and the experience of that and up and about. And we've had customers, you know, drop into Nottingham for a couple of months, then pick up and go to Chester for a couple of months. That I just don't think we saw customers like that before. And so, you know, weekends have changed. I said to the guys before, weekends are back, right? Weekends used to be a Saturday night. For a long time, a weekend was a Saturday night because you wouldn't go anywhere on a Friday night at 6 o'clock. Well, now you can travel on a Thursday or a Friday morning, work where you wouldn't tend to be on a Friday day, and your weekend starts at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and you're not stuck on the M6. So all of a sudden, Fridays and Sundays are not shoulders anymore. That a weekend is a 2 or 3 night experience and not just a Saturday night. So there's all this movement and for revenue managers, they're having quite an interesting time trying to pick the patterns. But that's where we're learning fast, and a lot's changing for sure.
Yeah. So if as you anticipate your length of stay in the future is likely to stay at least twice what it was before, does that affect the physical product? Have you kind of had to rejig your development plans about what you're actually going to offer the guests going forward in terms of apartments?
Not particularly, because I think what we've all enjoyed over the last, most people probably on this call, participants and us here, we've probably all found that we did quite well in the first place. But what's happened now over the last 2 years is that more people have experienced it or discovered it. So we always had a workspace in our apartments, whether we were good or, you know, for business customers. And leisure customers maybe didn't use that as much, but we always had the right facilities for leisure customers as well. The fundamentals haven't changed, whether you're there for business, there for leisure, there for long stay, there with the family. That hasn't particularly changed. I think that's the sweet spot that we've all been focused on for the last 2 or 3 years, but the market is just, you know, there's more of the market that's discovering that.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. Robert S., you've got quite an international clientele, both leisure and business. How has their behaviour changed in terms of, you know, the blurring of the edges between the two groups?
I don't know if the behavior, I'm not sure the behavior's changed. I mean, the requirement for a desk, as Robert there was just saying, we didn't have necessarily a desk in every apartment. It wasn't necessarily something that people had requested, whereas it became, you know, the absolute essential. We definitely shifted at the beginning and said, okay, you know, you want a desk, we will get you a desk. No matter how much it costs us. And then we try to be very flexible. I mean, for example, if you had a requirement to come and for a longer stay, we'd convert the second bedroom of a 2-bedroom apartment into an office, which was one, quite a few people requested that. But yeah, the behavior, yeah, I think it's people are, as Robert was just saying, thinking about extending their stays and making more of the time when they're here, and not necessarily rushing to get a Friday evening flight and then fly back late on the Sunday to try and squeeze out, you know, every second of that precious weekend. The flexibility is there now, and obviously you want good Wi-Fi. That's something that's always been I guess a standard, but now it's become doubly important because it's not just a question of spending a bit of time surfing when you're on holiday. It's can you sustain a Zoom call all day?
Yeah. And similar to what Robert said earlier, the global nomad, which was you know, a mythical beast that we heard about for a while. I actually know several of them now. They do exist. I can vouch for it. I wasn't too sure to start with, but are they coming into Cheval properties?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, it's always been quite a good mix of leisure and business. Probably more leisure in the past, and some of the properties that we have would cater more to one than the other.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a bit about marketing and distribution, because obviously the way you reach leisure guests is very different from how you reach your corporate guests. Robert, I know at Roomzzz you've placed quite a lot of emphasis in trying to encourage direct bookings, which I guess is easier once you've had people stay with you once. But how do you reach them? How do you reach the leisure guest in the first place?
It's been part of my mission for the last 4 years. I suppose, again, we landed a big piece of the puzzle, which you thankfully, thanks for that, pointed out to our development on one of your first slides. So yeah, we went on a mission to get a healthier balance for distribution. So we were overly reliant on third-party provision, as I'm sure many hotel providers would also have that story. And we understood that we didn't have the best mix of distribution, and there were loads of pieces to that. Obviously, brand experience, product is a component of improving that, but absolutely for us, it was owning price integrity, which is a big issue certainly across the leisure and B2C segments and distribution platforms. Controlling your own price and being in control of your own destiny, and being able to serve up so the book direct is obviously, you know, a nice notional idea, but unless you have the right technology lined up and a clear strategy across your marketing mix to drive that and deliver that, then you're gonna run around in a lot of circles for quite a long time. So for us, that was about the evolution of loyalty, reward, recognition, leveraging the emergence of meta platforms, in particular Google and Bing. You know, so now our switch, I mean, we significantly outperform the OTAs direct. That was probably 3 or 4 times OTAs, maybe on some properties, maybe 5 OTA bookings for each 1 direct. Now we outperform across the whole group, so we have a greater slice on our own site than we do from the collective third parties. And we removed ourselves from a lot of platforms and wholesalers and a lot of distribution platforms where you didn't have control of your own price. So we just took ourselves right out of all of that. You know, it's a big hit, and it's a big hit in the start, but long term was about integrity of the brand and the price, and then getting the marketing mix right.
Yeah. And have you used Airbnb, for example? Have you used any of the other intermediaries that
we still need them? I mean, we absolutely don't turn away and enjoy a good partnership. Airbnb and obviously some of the OTAs, not as many as we used to, but we focused on a handful of platforms, because that's where, you know, it's new business, new customers. We're not a big enough brand to believe that we're going to get everything direct always and forever, because it shouldn't work like that. You need new business, and it costs you some money, right? It's part of your marketing spend, that booking commission, just that you don't want it to be 50% of your business to come at high commission. You want that to be considerably smaller. And obviously we've been on that journey, and Perks, the loyalty platform that we developed, and pricing strategy was all about shifting that balance, getting a healthy feed of new business, and having a platform and a marketing platform through which we could embrace those customers long-term direct and improve that, you know, that notion of long-term lifetime customer value. Yeah.
I'd like to talk about loyalty programs in a minute, because I'm sure Gio's got something to say on that as well. But has anybody else tried any new distribution platforms specifically to reach leisure guests during the pandemic?
We definitely, we have introduced a little bit of Airbnb. That's something we've been trialing a bit more. The OTA platforms, yes, absolutely. That's always been an important component of the business and for wider marketing that we just couldn't afford to do otherwise. But then I feel like there's been a bit of an education that guests have begun, certainly over the last 2 years, have understood the value of going direct to the provider. And rather than just going straight, always booking via an OTA, they're appreciating the flexibility you get when you go down that direct channel. So we've had a similar experience to Robert Ali there and with Roomzzz, in that certain properties where the OTA mix would be on par with the direct web, that's now diminished, even though the OTAs have kind of come roaring back. So during the pandemic, they basically stopped spending. And then now they're sort of trying to compete again, but I think it's a bit more of an uphill struggle for them.
And do you think the customers booking direct, is that a result of a change in consumer behavior and people twigging that that's the best way to do it, or is that a result of your marketing efforts to tell them that that's the best thing to do?
I mean, obviously, I'm going to tell you it's the latter.
No one else is listening. You can just, we're just talking amongst ourselves here.
But yeah, no, definitely. Well, a combination. I mean, we were messaging to pick up on some of the prevailing trends. I mean, there's the staycation market. Obviously, we're pet friendly, so that's something that we sort of emphasize. I mean, as all those people were, particularly during some of the periods when people were more worried about COVID, you could see these coastal and rural destinations that were running 100% occupancy, and the cities were dead. So we were trying to sort of claw some of that back and say, look, we are with the apartment, you're safer than if you're just in a hotel room and having to mix with more people. We're pet friendly, so the whole family comes with you. So yeah, that messaging, I think, has also played its part in that shift in behavior and going direct.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about loyalty programs. And Gio, obviously Cheval Collection, as part of the broader Hilton family of brands, you've got the ability to plug into an enormous loyalty program with millions of members, presumably. So the business that comes to you from that, how much of that would you say is leisure business?
Well, at the moment, it would be merely 60% down on leisure business via Hilton owners.
Mm-hmm.
So to connect obviously some of the answers of the Roberts, first of all, we have seen a very big shift on profile persona, as well as type of members' expectations. And I call them members because the Fellows House, we believe that they enter kind of a member club with a united, obviously, hybrid concept. In any case, those expectations has risen, obviously, because maybe of the price we charge, or because of the length of stay, or because of the type of work they run, from shifting completely, obviously, the use and costumes, from leaving early, coming back late, having drinks, using restaurants, down to the pool very late at night. So really different type of lifestyle. Now, when it comes to this, obviously, on the loyalty element, we couldn't have taken a better decision to go for Hilton, and I promise they haven't paid us. The reason why I say this is I've opened obviously previously some Hiltons, and I knew the power of the Hilton Honor, obviously, campaign attractions. Obviously Hilton per se on the short stay side has got over 100 distribution channels, can attract so many different RFPs, has got pillars of sales, development, tech, HR, which can really strongly support the individual hotel or apart hotel. But in this occasion though, we are the only courier collection in the world with an apartment style business model. And that has given really a big learning between us and Hilton in how to shift or work together in order to enhance this model. For example, Robert A was obviously looking for different distribution channels and all of the rest. What we were doing instead is how we could have made that visible for all our guests out there when they were searching for Hilton.com and so on. How would have made that visible instead long stay packages rather than short stay packages? So a completely different shift of brand marketing advertisement, visibility and packaging options, a shift on the length of stay offering, a shift on the typical apart hotel service style. But that again was a huge learning between the Fellows House and the Curio Collection by Hilton, which I have to say, with such huge element of hotels and as many they run, to know that they have focused obviously attention to the single apart hotel Curio Collections of Fellows House has been obviously very privileged to have. Having said this, when it comes to loyalty, we have had a lot of implementation internally, which are aside the loyalty scheme rewards plan. One of these is, for instance, we recruit people by personality, and let's not forget about our people. I mean, we go into loyalty, businesses who find us the first time, they will never come back to you if it wasn't for our people. So we all know the resources challenges. So that was for us, obviously, one of the biggest pioneer campaign that we did internally. And then we do all of the other practices like other apart hotel of guest of the day, buddy adoption for long stay guests and for short stay guests, and getting to know you initiatives, which is all of the guests which find us first. And then obviously we attract them to become our extended stay. And that's exactly what the fruition has been in the past 6 months. We have the power of the loyalty scheme to found us as a apartment style hotel. And then because of our people, services, facilities, options, they would just kept to come back to us and become our extended stay. I believe it's like our old times when we were trying to establish our extended stay business across operator, which didn't know what they were operating for, and explaining to our guests or educating them on, you know what, you stay maybe Monday to Friday, just stay over for 3 weeks. It's cheaper, much cheaper. Plus you get less rates. Plus you get points with us. And that was a win-win. So on that loyalty scheme, Ali obviously advertised about the loyalty scheme that we get from Hilton Honor. And I would obviously give this opportunity to any operator out there of apart hotel, which can go into a loyalty scheme. Because remember, our guests that travel at the moment, 2, 3 days, 4 days, if they've got something in exchange which can have the value for money back, is something that will make a big difference. So that's how we played our game on that stage.
Thanks, Joe. So Robert, your perks scheme obviously is not on the scale of the major hotel company programs. So what was the rationale behind launching that, and who did you expect to join and benefit from it, and who actually is making the most of it?
I mean, I had 3 or 4 really key objectives. Obviously, we're a little baby compared to Hilton Honors, both in longevity and scale. However, we compete against big hotel brands for the regular corporate market. So I wanted to have a mechanism for recognizing our regular guests. And that's the fundamentals of loyalty. I wanted to have a pricing strategy that would drive business direct across the meta platforms and compete against other distribution channels, which was a pricing strategy which you needed to be able to do, and is quite an investment for us in the technology behind our loyalty and our booking engine. To achieve that. So the audience was 100% about channel shift. It was 100% about customer corporate loyalty. And it was absolutely then about reward and recognition. So it's true to say that the majority of leisure guests are not in it for the long-term points and rewards, because they're probably not going to stay 30, 40 times a year, although that we've got plenty of regulars who jump into our hotels on a monthly basis, and they might just clock up enough points and reward points, but they are there for the exclusivity of offers. So we give unique offers to only our membership. We'll give advance offers, so even just the seasonal sales, whether it's winter programs, they'll get advance lead on those. We might give them up to a week advance notice to book and get exclusive access to deals. We've got quite a lot of work going into partnership, so discounts into local restaurants and museums and theaters and all. There's a whole world of stuff you can do in partnership world with a program and an audience. We saw an immediate literally in the first month or two, even though it was still middle of COVID, it's 18 months into perks now. We saw an immediate kind of 20% adoption of eligible stays, as much as 20% of stays straight away. That's now double. So 18 months down the road, we're roughly speaking 40% of eligible stays actually signing up and joining perks. So we've got a nice little database that's there now, customers that are brand engaged, who have the benefit of added discount, exclusive offers. In the longer term, we certainly want to evolve the whole partnership opportunities. And mostly we just thank them for coming back. It's a lot to do with just recognizing your regular customers, and giving them, that exposure for the value that they are and being part of the family.
Yeah, it's obviously it's all about engaging with a brand and feeling a sympathy with a brand. Robert S., how important do you think a brand is when attracting your leisure customers? Or are they mainly price driven, or do they have a strong identity with the brand, do you think?
No, I think, we get a lot of repeats. I think because of the size, we don't operate a traditional loyalty program, but that does manifest itself by giving the general managers a much wider scope of movement. So they offer perks and gifts and late checkouts and upgrades, and so they have a bit of flexibility in terms of what they're offering the repeat guests. So it's really just keeping on top of that, and rewarding those people who do come back to us. And I think, it's obviously people are attracted by the service, and there is a price component to that, but I think the brand does make a big difference. And I know we've been talking very much about the guests coming in, but from the loyalty side, we do make a big effort with our agencies, or so the agencies that we work with, rewarding the business that comes through to us. And obviously they take a commission, but sometimes it's just about building up that relationship. And during COVID, we shifted from we'd always been quite proactive in terms of physically knocking on doors and shaking hands. But when that wasn't possible, we, with permission, got people's home addresses and sent them gifts on a quarterly basis, where they're just a reminder. Something small, but just a note to say we're still here. We still want to work with you, still want to talk to you, and we'll be here when we emerge from the pandemic. So I suppose for us, it's just playing both sides of that. It's the guest side, but also the partner side.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. We've got some good questions coming in, so I just want to rattle through a couple more things before we get around to answering some of those. Obviously, there is a sweet spot where you have the right balance between leisure and business guests to achieve optimal occupancy and profit, and that is obviously going to vary between one property and another. But how do you go about establishing that sweet spot? Robert A., do you want to kick off with that one?
Yeah, obviously it does. It definitely does vary, and as I said, I think that's one of the biggest things we learned really fast, because when the whole business model turned on its head, what is it, 2 years ago yesterday, then we had to pivot really, really, really quickly, and we jumped into a load of different type of customer that we hadn't had a huge amount of before. Coming through that, you realize actually a big chunk, that chunk needs to be a piece of the permanent puzzle, and a piece is leisure. So you can almost cut it into thirds, but it definitely varies from one city to the next. So of course you want your transient, midweek transient, weekend transient, leisure, groups, long stay, but it 100% varies. But the efficiency of long stay doesn't necessarily hit the same ADRs, but it converts very nicely to the bottom line. So it's not all about, I'm a really bad golfer, and golfers will talk about drive for show and put in for dough. Well, long stay business and getting it right is the put in, it's the dough. That's where the efficiency in the model comes from. So each one of us will vary across city to city, but there's a really healthy balance. If you get long stay right, it can contribute so much to your business without necessarily high ADRs.
Yeah. Gio, do you want to pick up on that? Because you've obviously got an interesting mix there.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't obviously agree more with Robert. Nevertheless, I wanted to say that there has been a big shift of revenue maximization to the optimum, obviously, ratio to get the best profit out there. But I have to say that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if you really see the model of the structure of each of the hotels, apart hotel, they would have got that revenue element team, which would have driven that maximization, bringing in some of the short to yield ADR and obviously long stay and so on. But then you would have got separately your operational team, which would have serviced the room, down the breakfast and so on. Now, if you really want to shift that into maximizing a bigger chunk of short stay to get obviously as much as possible out of this versus the long stay, the biggest fluctuation GOP factor here is our bottom line resources, supplies management, and everything else with utilities and inflation. What I'm saying this because is obviously we are as dynamic as we can be at the moment with a very high peak on short stay and long stay in the Fellows House at the Cheval Collection. However, some of the time that really constrain us from pushing that ADR so high or that volume so high could be exactly because we are conscious about the quality of the service expectation we want to set and because of those resources. So what I would like to say is everything is the same as before, but with the only element that now revenue managers are actually working together with operation director in line to say, okay, you know what, that Thursday I want to bring it up to this amount, and I know that the forecast is going to give me these top room numbers. Can we fulfill so? Can we give them, obviously, first of all, the turnaround thereafter, and second of all, the expectation of the service we want to establish? And that coexistent collaboration, to be honest, has never been as high as now before. And I have to say that this is forging a completely new, different model of operating when it comes to that maximization of short stay versus long stay ratio. And to me, to be honest, it's been a great learning. It's fantastic to see, obviously, the revenue directors are now becoming conscious about the operational level and involved within the operational level, when before they were very much aligned differently. And we all know, obviously, that sales and revenue had their own life and operation has always been obviously completely different. But now to have a team which collaborates together to ultimate goal of having that maximization to the best level, as Robert said, I believe that has been the biggest change in our platforms.
Thanks, Gio. Robert S., just quickly, what have you found are the main operational challenges serving a set of guests who are as diverse as, some might be staying for a year, some might only be staying for 3 nights? What are the biggest challenges there?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody went through that period, and still maybe to an extent, where the housekeeping challenge really affected everybody, where we went from most of the business in the house had been long stay, and then leisure started pouring back, and you had all this pent-up demand, and that shift from servicing apartments once a week to these daily checkouts or every couple of days, that was a big challenge for us, certainly making that shift. And then with the all the labour that had disappeared, as in people had gone home during the pandemic, obviously there's a Brexit component to that as well. So some challenges there. And then now, of course, you've got a tremendous amount of pent-up demand. So summer for us, we think it's going to will outstrip 2019, which was already an excellent year. But then the inflationary component there is massive, and so there's demand, so we can push some of that through the rates, definitely, but the challenge is, of course, we can take the high-end leisure that are willing to pay the high rates because of the pent-up demand, but we don't want to completely put off the longer stay and the corporates who are looking for who give us that flexibility and that base and that longer stay, which is the bread and butter. But yeah, we can't go too far, because we get to 2023 and the pent-up demand has perhaps gone through the system, and we need to make sure that we haven't royally pissed everybody off, basically. Yeah. Thanks, Robert. Okay, well, let's make a start with some of these questions from the audience, because there's some good ones here. Let's start with a question from Helen Yang, and she asks, how flexible are cancellation policies
or no shows for the super long stay guest? Who'd like to pick up on that one? Let's start with the thorny one.
I can jump in.
Yeah, please.
We don't do leases. So ours has always been, again, I've always felt that was part of the challenge, or the issue when COVID first hit. A lot of people hit their head against a brick wall trying to deal with those situations, and we just gave everything back. We absolutely embraced customer played the long game, reputation,
Yeah.
and didn't obstruct what was happening, and didn't misunderstand the sensitivities that happened way back then. We don't do leases, so all of ours are quite flexible, rolling. Even the long stays, they're essentially on a rolling basis. You're not overcommitting. You're buying yourself time to manage rate a little bit, and that's how we've moved forwards through COVID. In terms of the pricing has obviously improved, but you can change it. You can adapt your service level a bit with that. So we still have more flexibility than there was before. I mean, it always used to be the case. We felt lead times were getting shorter, but they definitely are shorter. You got people booking in for 3 or 4 month stays the day before. I mean, that's how late people's plans are these days, or how mobile they are, I suppose. So if you're not flexible, if you're not smart and not playing that game, you're never going to quite win. We've definitely played the long game and said, if we maintain our integrity, we'll 100% win in the long run for the brand. So we've just tried to maintain that. And obviously having a great loyalty scheme means you get more flexibility on your booking than you would if you booked through other channels.
Good plug. Thanks, Robert. Robert S., do you want to pick up on that one a little bit? The cancellation?
Yeah, I mean, I think flexibility is absolutely key. And people book for, say, 6 months, and they've got a break clause there, or they extend. And again, if it's a repeat customer, then we can be flexible. If they want to give us 30 days notice, then absolutely we can respond to that.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Okay, a question here from Samantha Martini. I'm going to aim this one at you, Gio. Do apart hotels offer anything additional for the long stay guests compared with the short stay guests? I guess that means in terms of service, F&B.
Absolutely. Well, the biggest things we do obviously comes to the offering we give them when they stay 7 night plus. So in here we have introduced amper baskets, which my colleagues may do the same, but nevertheless we give them as a starting point to obviously settle in their apartment and obviously live for the first 2-3 days with the items we've given them, plus giving them obviously an options of a pantry element or discounted obviously room service when it comes to anything else ordering. But we also give them a set of fantastic events which they can attend to, which is a calendar day by day, and thus really try to give them a extra membership element of being part of something. We have, I don't know, cocktail and canvas. So we have house parties. We've got masterclass. We've got choose your items. We cook it for you. So again, we really obviously give an extra foot to the community, and obviously starting point to stay with us when it comes to the long stay, because obviously we want to honor them. And they also have, on top of this, extra values when they want to get out of here, like bicycle rental or different price for parking and all of the rest. So I have to say, yeah, we do obviously offer different type of resources and facilities or unique selling point, obviously, when it comes to long stay to short stay. So that is quite clear the reason obviously why they are with us and what they can experience throughout all our model.
Thanks, Gio. Lucy Cotman Morrison asks, how sensitive is your pricing strategy to ascertain attraction for both shorter and longer stays? Robert A., do you want to kick up on that one? How does your pricing strategy adapt to demand from the different types of guests?
Well, I mean, they tend to come through different channels, so you can absolutely control it. But we've got pretty good technology stack at Roomzzz, so it's pretty easy to build the rates around your 1 to 7 night typical transient business or leisure, but that typical 1 to 7, 7 to 27, and 27 or 28 plus, and those are kind of the 3 buckets we tend to fit things into. And there are channels that work across all three buckets. Of course, on our website, you can 100% get all those layers of pricing according to your length of stay. But the tech has to support your strategy, and if you haven't got that tech quite right, then it can undermine what you're trying to do. So that's been a big investment over quite a long period of time, in fairness. But we've got some good partners now, and when you're built in the loyalty factor, and we've actually just literally completely changed our PMS as well. So we're in a pretty good place as far as technology is going to actually execute good plans and strategies.
Thanks, Robert. Okay, we've got time for one last question here, and we'll go around to each of you in turn for this one. This is from Christine Anderson, who asked, what would be your one top tip for a small operator to attract leisure guests? Robert S., let's kick off with you with that one.
I think when you're smaller, you probably need, well, if I can offer sort of two slightly tied in ones here, I think work with partners, and particularly try and drive some of that social traffic. So work with partners who are of a similar size to you, and whether that starts on a more local basis, and run some sort of joint promotion or competition, or just to get that awareness out there. So I think you've got to build with partners, and I think social is a great way to start, because it's a relatively cheap channel to use in the beginning, because you're just looking for some attractive content.
Gio, what's your take on that?
On top of what Robert S. just said, I would say events. I mean, well-being or something obviously which attract the short stay to come to stay with you and give something plus that won't experience obviously from using the kitchens. That is a huge plus for apart hotels, because furthermore, we're all small families, right? So when they come to stay with us, whether you've got the facilities or not, from the people to the offering is quite unique, and it's quite low basis. So having a plus of an event, a social evenings, which is start for them the evening, or connections obviously with local partner on well-being or anything else which obviously attracts that potential short stay guest weekend or weekdays, I would say to play a lot with that, because it's something unique that apart hotel have, and the sense of community which comes with apart hotel cannot be established between any single hotel out there. So that would be a huge plus, despite obviously all of the partnership on the selling and so on. So I would go for event big time.
Thanks, Gio. And finally, Robert A.
Yeah, it's distribution game, and there's a long and a short term strategy for me. So the long-term strategy was always about building brand awareness and brand and customer retention. The short game is playing the distribution strategy and not being afraid of those partnerships, and not seeing commission as a just a horrific big cost, but actually as a marketing spend. So be smart with your marketing and your distribution to get new eyes on your brand, because if you're a small business, you're looking for eyeballs and you're looking for reach, and you need to pay for that. It doesn't come for free. So do that in the long term, and make sure you're playing. Do that in the short term, and make sure your long game is to convert those customers and to extend your brand reach through your own channels.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Robert, and thank you all for what's been a really interesting session. I hope hope everyone watching has got something out of it. There's some great content there. Before we sign off, we're just going to show a few slides, and we're going to keep the session open for a couple of minutes after 2 o'clock, just so everybody can take some notes of all that good info in the chat. So the next Service Department News webinar is on April the 21st at 2 o'clock, and it's called US Extended Stay, Will the Bubble Burst? Obviously, that's a sector that's been performing absolutely phenomenally over the pandemic. A lot of investment going in there, so that will be an interesting one. You can see a link to register for that one in the chat, or you can scan the QR code that's there with your phone. Next week, we will be in Paris hosting our Recharge event, which is a great little event we do that's very interactive and curated, and it moves around different European cities. And we're very happy to be on the road again next week. It's been a while. There's more information about that also in the chat. If you'd like to sponsor any of our webinar streams or our events, drop my colleague Katie a line. Her contact details are on the screen and also in the chat. I'm sure she'd be delighted to hear from you. And thanks for watching. I think it's been a great session. Thank you to Robert A and Robert S and to Gio for your contributions. Thanks to IMS for sponsoring. If you're on any of the social channels on there, give us a follow. We're pretty active on there. Be good to interact with you. And as I said, all the information in the chat will stay there for a couple of minutes while we play another countdown clock. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.